sea turtles actually hug, and then his belly is kind of like curved this way, so that way they can match up a bit closer. The male will fertilize the female, and then the female will have tons of eggs.
Every day, we make new discoveries about our world, and one thing that will never get old is learning how animals produce offspring. Some of these animals get to do it the regular conventional way, and the others, well, not so much. 20. Red-sided garter snake. The red-sided garter snake is a small, mildly venomous species found in Canada and the northwestern United States. These snakes mate in the most fascinating way, in mass gatherings. Hundreds of snakes come together in large dens and create such a chaotic scene as they slither over one another in their eagerness to mate. In these gatherings, often called mating balls, a single female may attract up to 100 males competing for her attention. And expectedly, one snake may mate with several partners over several days. This pile of snakes can grow as large as 2 feet tall, but unfortunately, the weight of the group can sometimes crush a female trapped at the bottom. These mating parties are so fascinating that in some parts of the country, people gather to watch it all go down. And if there's another animal mating scene that anyone would pay to watch, it's the mating of the anglerfish. 19. Anglerfish. The love life of the deep-sea anglerfish is more like a horror story than a romance. The female anglerfish is actually much larger than the male, and she has a special glowing organ on her head that's used as a lure to attract prey, as well as males. The male anglerfish, on the other hand, is much smaller than the female. He doesn't have a digestive system, so he can't eat. This means that his sole purpose is to find a female and mate with her. When it's time to mate, the tiny male anglerfish uses his sharp teeth to bite and latch onto the female. Soon enough, he allows his body to merge completely with the female's. Over time, their heads dissolve, and their circulatory systems combine, and the male becomes a permanent part of the female's body. At this point, he functions solely as a sperm-producing organ, ensuring that the female can reproduce whenever she needs to. That sounds terrifying, but what happens to a male honeybee after mating is probably worse. 18. Honeybees. We hate to break it to you, but the mating habits of honeybees are not as great as you assumed. Honeybee queens mate during a special event called a mating flight, which happens when the queen is between 6 and 16 days old. During this time, the queen flies high into the sky to meet thousands of male honeybees, known as drones, who are waiting for her. Out of all these suitors, the queen will mate with about 10 to 20 drones while in flight. When a drone gets the chance to mate with the queen, he mounts her and uses his reproductive organ, called an endophallus, to transfer his semen. Once the drone has finished mating, he pulls away, but his endophallus remains inside the queen, and the drone dies shortly after because his abdomen is ripped open during separation. The next drone to mate with the queen removes the previous drone's endophallus before inserting his own, but this cycle repeats until the queen has mated with enough drones to store the sperm she needs to reproduce. Guess you can call that death by mating. At least it's not as nasty as when porcupines mate. 17. Porcupines. Porcupines have really interesting mating behaviors, especially during the fall breeding season, which usually takes place sometime in September. Male porcupines reach sexual maturity at about 24 months of age, while females mature earlier, at around 12 months. During mating season, males will expand their home ranges by up to 5 times their normal size as they search for receptive females. If more than one male is interested in the same female, they will fight for the chance to mate with her. These fights can be intense, and these males will use their sharp incisor teeth and quills to battle one another. In most cases, the largest and strongest male comes out as the winner. Once the victorious male has secured his chance to breed, he literally sprays the female with urine to signal his intent. If the female isn't ready to mate, she will shake off the urine and walk away. However, if she is ready, she stays put, and the male mounts her. The female makes things easier by curling her tail over her back, which helps to cover most of her sharp quills so that the mating process happens safely. We've seen mammals, reptiles, and insects. Birds also have a few tricks up their sleeves. 16. Frigate bird. Frigate birds are fascinating creatures, especially during their breeding season, when the males put on dramatic courtship displays to attract a mate. The process begins when a male finds what he believes is a good nesting site. Once settled, he fights to keep his home. Then he initiates the mating ritual and inflates his gular sac, a bright red, balloon-like pouch under his throat, and expands it into a heart shape. And so, when a female flies nearby, the male springs into action. He flaps his wings energetically, shakes his head, and lets out loud, deep calls that can sound like a bellowing elephant. If the female finds him appealing, they hit it off. If she doesn't, she goes her way. During the breeding season, many male magnificent frigate birds gather together at display sites to compete for female attention. Each male inflates his gular sac to its fullest, sometimes so large that it almost hides his head from view. And whichever female is most impressed gets to mate with her preferred male. As vicious as they are, the mating behavior of this next animal will shock you. 15. Hyenas. Hyenas are already strange creatures, but their mating behaviors are even more interesting. When a male hyena wants to approach a female he is interested in, he does so cautiously. He uses a method called approach avoidance, where he gets close to her but retreats several times because he's unsure of the female's response. Once he finally gets close enough, the male starts performing smaller, frantic behaviors to catch the female's attention. One of them is foreleg grooming. He starts licking his front legs to make his fur look neat and smooth. If everything goes well and the female seems interested, the male performs the final and most important part of his courtship routine, the bow. He approaches the female, lifts one of his forelegs, and crosses it over the other while bowing his head. This action is a symbol of submission, showing the female that he respects her dominance and is ready to mate. Humans aren't the only ones who love to see men take responsibility. The pufferfish take it to the very next level. 14. Pufferfish. The mating process of the pufferfish starts with the male creating an elaborate pattern of circles on the sandy sea floor to attract females. Females choose mates based on various factors, including the size of the circle, the number of peaks and valleys, the composition and color of the sand, and the overall quality of the design. When the female is impressed by a male's courtship display and decides to mate, she descends to the center of the nest. The male then approaches her, and the two press their bodies together. They vibrate in unison until the female releases her eggs into the nest. After mating, the females leave the nest while the males stay behind to care for the eggs. Once the eggs are laid, the males stop maintaining the geometric patterns of the nest. Instead, they focus entirely on protecting and caring for the eggs until they hatch. Next up are the tall guys of the animal kingdom, with a completely different approach to mating. 13. Giraffe. Giraffes are polygamous, which means that males can mate with multiple females in their herd. While they can mate at any time of the year, it usually happens most often during the rainy season when food and water are more abundant. When a male giraffe is interested in a female, he starts by gently tapping her hind leg with his foreleg or resting his chin on her back. This is his way of getting her attention and signaling his interest. After that, the male will do something really strange. He'll have to sniff the female's urine to check if she is fertile and ready to mate. If the female isn't fertile yet, the male doesn't give up right away. He will follow her around, waiting for the right time for his woman to be ready. However, if her scent doesn't seem promising or she doesn't meet his interest, he may leave her alone and move on to find another potential mate. When the male finds a female who is ready, he will mount her from behind to mate. The act itself is very brief and will last only a few seconds. Now let's find out what happens when the psychos of the sea decide to make babies. 12. Dolphins. Humans see dolphins as very pleasant creatures, but their mating behavior is very different from what many people imagine. Just like giraffes and a few other animals, dolphins don't have a specific mating season. They can mate at any time of the year, and it's even been suggested that they mate not just for reproduction, but also for pleasure. Male dolphins often work together in groups to find and take fertile females away from rival dolphin groups. Once they've managed to separate a female from her original group, the males stick together in a team to keep her under control. This behavior is called herding, but it's actually more aggressive than the term suggests. The males perform a series of dramatic and synchronized displays to impress and intimidate the female. They leap out of the water, belly flop, swivel, and somersault, all in perfect coordination with one another. If the female isn't impressed or tries to escape, the situation can become aggressive. The males will chase her, bite her, slap her with their fins, or even ram into her with their bodies to force her to stay. Females in this situation often end up with tooth-raking marks on their bodies from these encounters. Dolphins aren't so cute anymore now, are they? For their neighbors, the Argonaut octopus, it's just as horrifying. 11. Argonaut octopus. With this species of octopus, finding a mate is no easy task, especially considering the stark size difference between males and females. Male Argonaut octopuses are tiny, while females can grow up to 30 times larger than them. When it's time to mate, the male Argonaut octopus literally gives both life and limb. Instead of mating directly with the female, the male uses a specialized arm called a hectocotylus, which is essentially a modified arm containing a sperm packet. When a female swims by, the male detaches his hectocotylus, which then floats toward her on its own. The arm reaches the female and deposits the sperm inside her mantle cavity, which is a spacious area in her body where her gills are located. Once the mating process is complete, the male dies. Meanwhile, the female continues her life, using the stored sperm to fertilize her eggs and carry on the species. Next up, let's check out how bedbugs, nasty as they are, make babies. 10. Bedbugs. Unlike many animals that engage in courtship rituals to attract a mate, bedbugs skip this entirely. Instead, they use a mating behavior called traumatic insemination. Here's how it works. A male bedbug climbs onto a female and, instead of mating in a traditional way, he stabs her in the side of her body with his hypodermic-like penis. He then injects his sperm directly into her body cavity. Over the next several hours, the sperm travels through her body and eventually reaches her ovaries, where it fertilizes her eggs. This method of reproduction is not only painful for the female, but also harmful. The stabbing leaves the female with physical scars, and repeated traumatic insemination can cause significant injuries. Because of this, after being stabbed by multiple males, the female will often leave the group and seek shelter elsewhere to avoid further harm. Once fertilized, the female lays her eggs and then needs to feed on blood and mate again before she can reproduce a new batch of eggs. Interestingly, if no other males are around, the female may even end up mating with her own offspring. That must be tough, but probably not as tough as what a penguin has to do to win over a female. 9. Penguins. Penguin mating rituals differ by species, but common behaviors are visual and vocal displays. They may bow, swing their heads side to side, or stretch them upward. Once a pair is formed, they perform a mutual ecstatic display, stretching their heads and necks upward while making braying sounds. For Adelie and Gentoo penguins, finding the perfect pebble is an important part of courtship. These penguins live on rocky shores and use smooth stones to build their nests during mating season. So, a male penguin will search for the smoothest pebble and present it to a female as a gift. If she approves, they mate and work together to build their pebble mound for the eggs. However, some males resort to stealing pebbles from other nests when they can't find a good one on their own. Now, onto a more familiar animal. 8. House mice. As ordinary as you might think house mice may be, their mating habits are very interesting. Mice start mating very early in life, with most beginning to mate at just 6 weeks old. Some even start between 21 and 30 days of age. Males try to attract females by singing unique ultrasonic mating calls. These high-pitched sounds are often accompanied by the male sniffing and following the female. These calls are triggered by female pheromones and continue throughout the mating process, especially during mounting. After mating, the female develops a copulation plug. This plug is what prevents her from mating with another male for at least 24 hours to ensure that the eggs fully develop. Of all the animals on this list, this next bird is definitely one of the most impressive. 7. Bowerbirds. For creatures like bowerbirds, real estate is the real deal. The males spend a lot of time preparing their bowers, which are structures built to impress females. Once the bower is ready, the male decorates it with anything he can carry. Common decorations include seeds, pebbles, snail shells, berries, flowers, and even bones. They also use man-made items like glass, plastic, cloth, aluminum foil, or anything shiny and colorful. Some males even paint their bowers with a mixture of charcoal dust and saliva or plant juices. When he's through, he watches for females or rival males who might try to ruin his work. If a female likes the bower's design, she visits the male, who will sing or perform a dance to win her over to mate with her. After mating, if she stays too long, the male may chase her away to clean up his bower and prepare for the next female visitor. By now, you must be wondering how the big boys of the animal kingdom do it. Let's find out. 6. Hippos. Hippos aren't exactly the romantic kind, and their approach to mating is far from subtle. When a male is trying to show off his dominance and impress a female, he urinates and defecates at the same time, using his tail to fling the waste in all directions. Sometimes the bull will even spread his waist directly in the direction of the female he wants to mate with, making his intentions very clear. Males may fight for the right to mate, and the struggle to secure a female's attention can last up to 3 days. Once the male has established dominance and selected a mate, the actual mating takes place, typically in the water. Unfortunately, there's no courtship or bonding between the male and female before mating. Instead, the male chases the female through the water. When he catches up, he forces her to submerge beneath the surface during the mating process. The female's head will come up periodically so she can breathe, but otherwise she remains underwater until the act is complete. In or out of water, hippos are no match for flamingos when it comes to romance. 5. Flamingos. Flamingos are exceptional dancers in the animal world, and it's something they use to get the ladies to come around. They twist and preen their feathers, scratch their heads, and even march together in perfect unison. Their mating dance also involves bending forward, raising their tails, and vigorously flapping their wings. Researchers have discovered that flamingos with the most varied dance moves and the ability to switch seamlessly from one move to another are the most successful at finding partners. And so, it's almost like a dance battle, and only the best dancers get a partner. Then, when a female sights her preferred partner, she signals her readiness by walking away from her group, with a male following close behind. Once she's ready, she stops, lowers her head, and spreads her wings. This posture is an invitation for the male to mount her. Mating often happens in the water, and after mating, the male performs an acrobatic exit, standing briefly on her back before jumping over her head and back into the water. Speaking of water, sea turtles have a pretty complicated mating process. 4. Sea turtles. Sea turtles are mostly solitary creatures that really only come together during mating season. And for these guys, it can also be quite dangerous. When sea turtles are ready to reproduce, they leave their feeding grounds and travel back to the beach where they were born. Female turtles make this migration every 2 to 3 years, while males travel to breeding areas annually. During courtship, a male turtle will approach a female and begin by gently biting her neck and flippers to signal his interest. If the female doesn't resist or swim away, the male climbs onto her back and grips the edge of her shell with his long, sharp claws on his front flippers. These claws help him hold on, but they can leave scratches on her shell and even cause bleeding in the softer parts of her body. Once mating is complete, the female will eventually make her way to the sandy shores to lay her eggs. She digs a nest in the sand, carefully lays her eggs, and covers them up before returning to the ocean. Next, it's an insect that completely wipes out her mate after all is said and done. 3. Black widow spider. For male widow spiders, mating is a deadly activity. In species like the black widow and redback spider, the much larger females are known to eat the smaller males during or after mating. This behavior is why they're called widows. Sometimes, the female catches the male as he tries to escape, but surprisingly, many males don't even attempt to flee. Instead, they seem to embrace their fate and perform somersaults that land them directly onto the female's fangs. This seemingly suicidal behavior actually has a purpose. In 1996, a scientist discovered that male redback spiders who allow themselves to be cannibalized experience longer mating sessions. By sacrificing their lives, the males can transfer more sperm to the female, and the female spider stores the sperm in 2 specialized organs, which allow her to control when she uses the stored sperm to fertilize her eggs. With bigger animals like raccoons It's more of a polygamous affair. 2. Raccoons. Raccoons are quite nasty even when it comes to mating. After copulation, a male might stay with the female for only a few days before moving on to find another mate. And according to the research, the largest and most dominant male in a group's territory mates with 50 to 60% of the females. Female raccoons, on the other hand, are more selective and typically mate with just one male. They have a very short time to conceive, only about 3 to 4 days during each mating season. The actual mating involves repeated sessions of foreplay and copulation over several nights, with each session lasting about an hour. After mating, the female goes through a pregnancy that lasts about 9 weeks. When the time comes, she gives birth to 3 or 4 baby raccoons, known as kits. The last animal on this list is the bonobo, and you'll definitely be surprised by their mating habits. 1. Bonobos. Bonobos are some of the most social and peaceful animals on the planet, and they are often described as animals that truly make love, not war. And sometimes they take it way too far. Instead of fighting or getting into conflicts, bonobos use copulation and physical affection to solve problems and keep the peace within their groups. What's interesting is that bonobos don't limit their sexual activity to reproduction. They engage in sexual contact for amusement, pleasure, and improving their relationships with others. This behavior is so common that it's often referred to as the bonobo handshake. Bonobos have sexual contact with both the opposite and even the same sex. And unlike most animals, bonobos are also known to mate while facing each other, which is considered rare in the animal kingdom. And according to DNA testing, in nature, they're the closest animals in nature to humans. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about these animals, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Let us know in the comments which animal surprised you the most, and stay tuned for more incredible facts about our world. See you next time.